Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to this November 13th, 2013 edition of Nightcast. Tonight, again, the fifth seal is very much in the news. That is the fourth seal related to, and the third seal as well. Let's put the slide on the screen. The third seal being famine. They're still having problems receiving food over in the Philippines, where Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda, hit last Friday, creating extreme devastation with as many as 10,000 people feared to have been dead, 11 million people affected, and many people today still hungry and needing food. You'll hear that in several videos we have for you. That relates to the third seal, the black bar you see over, 1, 2, 3, that Revelation depicts by a black horse, which Jesus Christ described very simply as famine. The fourth seal, the pale horse whose rider is named Death, alongside whom Hades, hell, the grave, rides, which Jesus Christ described in that the gospel writers wrote up in three different words. One, loimos, meaning disease epidemics, the plagues of Egypt, that kind of thing. Seismos, meaning seismic activity, commotions in the air, commotions on the ground. And terike, meaning trouble, just general big trouble, but not the mega trouble of the fifth seal, the Great Tribulation. We may come back to that chart in a moment, but I want to go ahead and go to the first story first, where Typhoon Haiyan had a teenager trapped for 6 days amid her family's bodies.
At Tacloban Hospital, this 13-year-old girl has just been brought in, badly injured and deeply traumatized. For 6 days she was trapped in the ruins of her home, the bodies of her whole family lying around her. The only thing she has been able to tell nurses is her name, Rebecca. The doctor immediately sets to work cleaning her badly infected wounds, but he only has the most basic supplies.
We have no stocks, as you can see. We have no equipments. The only problem is we don't have medicines. We lack medicines. So we need your help.
Outside, others are not waiting for help. They're helping themselves. At first glance, it's hard to tell exactly what is going on here, until you realize this is a petrol station.
So this down here, this is diesel in this tank underground here, and they very ingeniously, you can see what they're doing, putting these down, lifting it up and filling out bottles. And what is it? What do you need? Is for your car? For your motorcycle? For motorcycle? Oh, you run out of fuel now? Yeah, okay.
If this is looting, then it is very patient and well-ordered looting. The truth is, it is the only way for people to get fuel here. These are strange days in Tacloban. At noon, the streets emptied and suddenly soldiers appeared. Yesterday's disaster zone briefly took on the appearance of a war zone. With the rumour mill in overdrive, several people told me the city was about to be attacked by communist rebels.
It's not really clear what's going on here. The army have come in here this morning to reassert control. Now they say they have some sort of gunman down this street, pinned down.
We never did find out, but the army does appear to be here in force now. Back at the hospital, it's little consolation. They're short of everything. These people are waiting for operations they can't have. This baby has a high fever and diarrhea, but even the drinking water she so obviously needs has been carefully rationed. In time, Rebecca's physical wounds will heal, but for her and so many here, there will forever now be life before and after the typhoon. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, BBC News, in Tacloban, Central Philippines.
And friends, a man whose house was swept away during Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda, as they're calling it locally, says international aid is needed urgently to help the city of Tacloban, which has been wrecked. The BBC's John Donison spoke to Jose, who is living inside a sports center, which is doubling up as a makeshift shelter for victims of the disaster. You'll hear Jose say, "People of the world, come to my city. We need you. Please come to my city. We need help very badly."
This place is called the Astrodome, a sports centre and convention centre. It's right next to the ocean and took the full brunt of the typhoon when it struck on Friday. Thousands of people flocked here to seek shelter, and it's now become, in effect, a refugee camp for hundreds of desperate families. With me is Jose Aguinalde. Now, you live just down the road, your house washed out.
Yes, sir.
And what are you doing now?
Well, like most people here, we are looking for shelter. We're looking for food, for water, maybe for medicines.
Have you had any help at all?
Not very much. It's been 5 days since the storm, and the food, the aid has come only in trickles. There are thousands of people in this city alone. 80% have no homes right now.
Inside the convention hall, you've got people packed in at night, I think, sleeping. Many are out during the daytime looking for food.
Yes, they are scavenging for food outside during the day. They sleep here during the night and wherever they can find, refuge.
And what about sanitation, toilets?
Oh, it's worse. Please don't ask me about it. It's worse. You won't find it anywhere.
And this morning we saw many people heading out of town. They've given up here.
They're still here, but they're just going to places where they think they can find food.
And we've seen very little of the Philippines government here doing anything. What do you think of their response?
I think the government now, especially the city government, is paralyzed. The provincial government is paralyzed. There's no... the army just came over here yesterday just to maintain peace and order. I think we need massive international relief aid here, now. The situation is so desperate, we need aid now. Because if nothing will be done in the next few days, hundreds of people more will die. More people will be violent, they will run riots around the city. I don't know. I was born here. I love the city, but I think it's a total wreck right now. People of the world, come to my city. We need you. Please. Come to my city. We need you. We need help. We need help very badly.
Friends, there's a lot of reason now to be praying. Thy kingdom come, and there is help on the way. Larger aircraft will start arriving in the Philippines today, which aid agencies hope will allow more people to receive the supplies they desperately need. General Paul Kennedy, commander of the U.S. Marine Task Force, explained to the BBC's Jonathan Head the military's role in distributing aid to those in need across the country. He said, "This will completely change the pace of our buildup of supplies."
We're going to transition from those medium aircraft to larger aircraft. So we just did a proof of the runway. We're going to bring in C-17s. Now you can bring in the Australians, you can bring in the Canadians. They've got big airplanes with big heavy equipment. And so that will completely change the pace of our buildup of supplies. And then the Philippines are building their capacity to get that out to the stricken areas.
And what about the use of your heavy lift choppers, your Ospreys, to get in particular to parts of the Philippines hit by this typhoon that simply have got nothing so far?
No, right. So there's three areas that we're mostly concerned about. Obviously, Tacloban, you're standing on. The island across there is Samar. There's a road that connects us to that, to the about 12 different municipalities out there. They are just as devastated and there's nowhere to get C-130s in. So we're using ospreys to fly folks out there. So the two ospreys that you just saw land are taking a combat controlling team from the Air Force out to an airstrip. They're going to certify it for C-130s, and then we'll be able to start shuttling supplies. Not everything will have to come through here, and that will provide relief. And so it will increase our throughput, not just pushing it through a soda straw. It'll go through several sites. And then the ospreys will be able to take it from there to the smaller villages. There's soccer fields, there's playgrounds. We've already done reconnaissance of those points, and so that's where we'll distribute the aid.
Okay, and friends, efforts to get aid to the people on the ground in typhoon-hit parts of the Philippines have been hampered by logistical challenges and looting. The BBC's Jonathan Head reports from Tacloban, where he says people are desperately trying to escape as soldiers try to control the lawlessness which has become prevalent on the streets. The UN says more than 11 million people may have been affected and some 673,000 displaced by Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda.
There are planes arriving carrying important supplies, and far more than there have been in recent days, but it's still essentially a pinprick. And we've seen a Singapore military plane arrive with medical supplies. We've seen a Belgian team who can set up a field hospital. They're still trying to decide exactly where they'll put them. The UN humanitarian chief, Valerie Amos, has arrived and has expressed her own real disappointment and concern about the state of assistance. She said, people should be getting more help than they've had up to now. And it really is pretty desperate. I mean, this airport it will be the nerve center. There are a lot of UN officials, American officials and others flying in, trying to work out how they can make the aid, when it comes in, flow from here into a town that is breaking down very, very quickly. We're now to the 6th day after the typhoon. I've met people at this airport who have walked for 20 kilometers because there's no fuel, there's no transport, with their families trying to get out with no drinking water. We've been giving our water to dehydrated children, really desperate. If you try and carry water just at this airport, people will mob you, they're so desperate. In town, it's even worse. People can get some water, although it's dirty, but there's no food. And it's creating a very lawless situation. We saw a massive convoy of vehicles trying to get out of town today, of citizens of Tacloban who are being driven out not so much by the food shortages, but by the fear of anarchy. So it's a very urgent situation. The beginnings of an aid operation are becoming much more visible here now, but I wouldn't imagine significant amounts of help are going to start reaching people in there, probably for 24 or 48 hours still. The Philippines national government took charge right after the emergency because the local government was wiped out. Then they sent the army, but rather late, reinforcements in to try to establish law and order because people were just helping themselves. A prison broke open, so all the inmates got out. Now you see a lot of soldiers, but it isn't clear whether there's a very orderly deployment. There are a few more on the streets, but they're not that visible. And clearly the law and order situation has got the local population extremely worried. If that many people are leaving for that reason, it may get better. There are a lot of soldiers here. We do see more truckloads of them going around. But it is taking a very long time. The 6th day afterwards, at least the security situation, the idea of showing the presence of the government, showing that something would happen, you would have expected that to be more orderly, more visible and more organised. And frankly, it's been very piecemeal.
Friends, many international agencies and the Army have both contributed to aid distribution efforts, but some of the church organizations inside of the Philippines have been playing a helpful role, as George Alagia reports.
A place for prayer, now a place for sanctuary. Typhoon Haiyan blew open the doors of the church and the parishioners walked in, grieving and homeless. The pews where they once knelt to worship are now the spaces they call home. Father Edwin Balkaltos is like the Good Shepherd with his flock. He never doubted this was what he should do.
The church is the church for the poor. So we not only do the sacraments, but we have to save lives of people.
6 days on, and he's not seen any official aid here, and he doesn't blame his parishioners for what many have described as looting.
For me, what he did was moral. It was not more immoral, because that's their basic need. When they loot the store, the shop, the groceries, they want to live. So it's not, for me, it's not a sin.
In all, there are more than 300 families here. That's nearly 2,000 people.
Tita Tangolina.
Unlike some of her neighbours, Tita Tangolina's family, 3 generations of it, survived the typhoon intact. They described how they clung to each other on a neighbour's roof. All around them there are families with similar stories. Tita said she would take me to her home, just a 5-minute walk away. She'd lived in the house for 20 years and in the area for more than double that.
So your house was just behind the big house that's standing?
We felt all alone in that time after the water came in. We were asking and asking, but it seemed nobody was around to help. We needed help with our children and our house. There were no doctors around, and there was no food.
There'll be 4 masses this Sunday as usual. That's one thing that stayed the same when all around them the world is upside down.
Very, very, very devastating situation there in the Philippines. I wanted to show you that last one because it just gives a little more feel for what all is going on over there in an effort to recover from a major, major devastation. In other news stories, the United States has designated Nigeria's Boko Haram and Ansaru militant groups as foreign terrorist organizations. The State Department described the move as an important step to help Nigeria root out violent extremism. The BBC's Will Ross has this report.
There's no doubt that the group known as Boko Haram has been responsible for a campaign of terror which has led to thousands of deaths. Its targets have been widespread across swathes of northern Nigeria. No one knows who is safe these days. The pressure had been building for the US State Department to label Boko Haram and its offshoot Ansaru terrorist organizations. Now that decision has been taken, what are its implications? Once America brands a group a foreign terrorist organization, it becomes a crime under US law to provide support to that group, be that finance, weapons, training or shelter. Members of the group who are not already US citizens will not be granted entry to America and could in some cases be forcibly removed. Any cash with connections to Boko Haram found in the US banks will be confiscated. Across the continent, 3 other groups are already on the US list: Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Ansar Dine in Mali. Some will ask why it's taken so long. Although Boko Haram's origins go back about a decade, for most of that time it was viewed only as a domestic threat. But during the last 3 years, attacks have intensified and there have been signs of a more international agenda. There was the 2011 attack on the United Nations building in Abuja, plus reports that Boko Haram has established links with Al-Qaeda militant groups in Africa.
We continue to believe that Boko Haram remains primarily a Nigerian organization within its principal objectives in Nigeria. We do believe that it has links to AQIM. In terms of the level of that, I don't have an evaluation.
Whilst the US supports the fight against Boko Haram, the White House has stressed the need for civilians' rights to be respected. The Nigerian army is frequently accused of carrying out human rights atrocities. There is as yet no evidence to suggest that this war is being won against Boko Haram. Every single week we're hearing about attacks by the militants and civilians being killed. Will Ross, BBC News, Lagos.
Friends, in this next story, a couple of things that I find interesting. One, the lead into this story refers to Britain's holdings as the Commonwealth. I haven't heard that term in some little time now, but it also contained, the other thing that was interesting to me is that it talks about a baton relay, where a baton is being passed. And for a lot of us, that has, a lot of you who view, I know, that has a lot of meaning related to a church era of which we've been a part of for some time. But in this last story for tonight, Commonwealth Games baton relay arrives in a certain area of New Guinea. The Queen's baton relay has arrived in Papua New Guinea as it continues its journey around all 70 nations and territories of the Commonwealth. Almost all of the land in this area of New Guinea is thought to be forest or swamp, and the islands are home to some of the most varied wildlife on the planet and a rich traditional culture. The Scottish adventurer Mark Beaumont was there as the baton arrived.
On its Commonwealth journey, the Queen's baton will be greeted by cultures and communities as diverse as the planet can offer. The baton and the global communities it represents are what connects this relay on New Ireland and Papua New Guinea to the high-tech cities like Kuala Lumpur and Singapore it just passed through.
We're not allowed past until the village chief has seen the baton, accepted it, and we're allowed to carry on through. It's a wonderful welcome, but it can also be quite an intimidating welcome.
I was struck by how heartfelt this reception was.
I feel so very happy.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
In Papua New Guinea, the natural world is a true treasure trove.
It's best known for the beautiful birds of paradise. I mean, they're even on the national flag. But so much is yet unknown. Hundreds of new species, hundreds of new birds and animals have been discovered even in the last couple of decades.
Papua New Guinea has a lot to protect. Its incredibly rich variety of wildlife and also its traditional culture. On this trip, I've already experienced a huge range of lifestyles. The Queen's baton is a reminder that they are all part of one community. The community of the Commonwealth.
Mark Beaumont, BBC News, Papua New Guinea.
Papua New Guinea. Okay, sounds like a place might be good for a visit sometime. Friends, that's it for tonight. This Wednesday night edition of Nightcast. God willing and the creek don't rise, we'll be back again tomorrow night, Thursday evening, with another edition of the current news of the day related to the Bible and prophecy. Until next time, your host Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth saying, so long, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.